ever catch yourself like endlessly scrolling online or buying things you don't even need or just like always chasing that next promotion, that next thing?
Oh, yeah.
It's like we're hardwired for that, isn't it? To constantly crave more.
Totally.
And that's like exactly what Erich Fromm tackles in To Have or To Be.
Right. Yeah, it's a classic.
So this deep dive, it's all about his ideas on, well, the two ways we exist. Are we defined by all the stuff we collect, the having, or by, truly being present in each moment?
What's so fascinating is he was a prominent social psychologist and humanist, and he wrote this back in the 70s.
Right.
But it feels like eerily relevant to how we live now.
Oh, 100%. Okay, so let's get into it. The having mode. Fromm's not just talking about like your car or your fancy gadgets. It's much broader than that.
Yeah.
It's this deep-seated need to own stuff, status, even people. Like it's what we use to make up who we think we are.
It's like you're trying to build your identity like on this foundation of possessions, achievements. But the thing is, and this is where it gets really interesting, Fromm links this all the way back to Freud's idea of the anal character.
Okay.
That fixation on control that ultimately stems from like a deep insecurity.
So you're always trying to fill a void.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're constantly trying to fill a void, but like it's never really satisfied, is it?
It's never enough.
Never enough. And, Fromm even argues that something as simple as like eating the same breakfast every day.
Okay.
That can be a form of having.
Really?
Clinging to that routine for a sense of security. He asks this really powerful question. He says, if I am what I have, and if what I have is lost, who then am I?
It makes you think, right? It's like, if I lost it all tomorrow, everything.
Everything.
Would I even know myself?
Right.
Okay, so that's the having side. A little heavy, maybe.
Yeah.
But Fromm doesn't leave us hanging. He offers the being mode as like this alternative. So tell me more about that. What is that?
So being is about shifting from that like scarcity mindset,
Yeah.
You're always needing more to one of abundance.
Okay.
It's not about what you acquire, but how you experience each moment. Think like mindfulness, self-actualization.
Right.
Finding joy and connection and creativity in simply being present rather than constantly striving for more.
So less about checking things off the to-do list and more about like actually living.
Exactly. And, Fromm uses this great example. He talks about encountering a flower.
Okay.
In having mode, you'd pluck it, possess it, maybe dissect it to try and understand it.
Right.
Being is about appreciating its beauty, its existence in that moment without needing to own it.
Just appreciating it for what it is.
Exactly.
Okay,
Yeah.
that makes sense. But how does this whole active versus passive thing Fromm talks about, how does that fit in?
Right.
Because being, at least on the surface, it sounds kind of passive, doesn't it?
He challenges that assumption directly.
Okay.
See, we often mistake busyness for productivity. We're constantly on, we're scrolling, we're consuming.
Right.
But is that truly active? Fromm would say that true being
often requires stillness, reflection.
is in those quiet moments.
Exactly. That's where the real growth, the real connection happens.
So those quiet moments that we often avoid,
Yeah.
that's where the good stuff is.
Yeah.
Mind blown.
But it's true. When I think about times I felt truly alive, it was often when I was just present, not, caught up in needing things.
And that's a key distinction, right?
Yeah.
It's not that enjoyment of material things is like inherently bad.
Right.
But from saying our identity shouldn't be rooted in them. He wants us to see how modern society fuels this having mode,
Right.
but also how we can consciously choose differently.
Which is a perfect segue from Fromm's idea of social character, right?
Right.
It's like how much of our drive to have, to always be accumulating more, how much of that is influenced by, the world around us? Like, is it nature or nurture?
Yeah, that's the big question, isn't it? And he argues that it's kind of a two-way street.
Okay.
So our individual personalities, they're shaped by, those dominant values of the society we live in.
Right.
But then at the same time, we're also contributing to those values, perpetuating them.
It's a feedback loop.
Exactly. And so right now, let's be honest, what's worshipped more than anything else?
Ooh, that's a big question. Success. Money. That, like, picture-perfect Instagram life everyone pretends to have.
There you go. Fromm calls it a secret religion, this pursuit of power and possessions above all else.
Wow.
And this social character, it plays out in everything. Even, he says, the way we love.
Wait, really? Love, too.
Yeah, he actually gives this really interesting example. He talks about motherly love versus fatherly love.
Okay.
He says, motherly love, ideally, it's unconditional, right?
Yeah.
It's about being present with the child just as they are. But fatherly love, often it's tied to expectations.
No, interesting.
To achievements.
Yeah.
Did you succeed? Did you acquire more than the neighbor's kid?
Wow.
See how Hagen creeps in there?
Oh, I never thought about it that way. But it's so true. Like, even as adults, we feel this pressure to constantly achieve, to prove our worth through, like, what we have to show for it.
It's exhausting.
It is exhausting.
And Fromm would say that's by design.
Right.
In a consumer society, like, we become the products. He calls it the marketing character.
Oh, wow.
We're obsessed with packaging ourselves, packaging our experiences, always selling, never just being.
Okay, yeah, that one hits close to home. It's like, instead of actually enjoying that incredible vacation, we're too busy trying to stage the perfect photo for social media. Like, we're not even present in our own lives anymore.
And that's the danger, right?
Yeah.
Of this having mode spiraling out of control. But, and this is the important part, Fromm doesn't just leave us with this, like, bleak diagnosis,
Okay, good.
He really believes that we can shift towards being, both individually, within ourselves, and then also as a society.
So there's hope. But tell me more about this shift. Like, what does that actually look like?
Well, he's not going to offer, like, a sunset program.
Right. Yeah.
And he's really clear that it takes conscious effort.
Of course, yeah.
We have to recognize those having tendencies in ourselves. And then, choose differently. It's about being present with our loved ones, finding joy in creativity and connection, valuing experiences over material possessions.
So changing our priorities, both, like, personally and as a culture.
100%. He connects his ideas to things like, the minimalist movement or mindful consumption.
Right.
These are all steps in the right direction, he'd say.
Okay.
But it also requires us to question, like, the very fabric of our systems.
So it's bigger than just buying less stuff.
It has to be.
We have to, like, rethink this whole system that's pushing us to constantly want more.
That's the idea. He really envisioned a society where, human well-being, cooperation, genuine connection, those things are valued above profit and, like, endless growth. It's a vision of a more just and equitable world, one where being isn't this, like, radical act, but the norm.
It's a powerful vision. But can we actually get there? Like, with everything happening in the world right now, I don't know, it's hard not to feel a little pessimistic. What would Fromm say to that?
He would probably remind us that, like, throughout history, right, humans have faced incredible challenges.
Right.
Wars, famines, you name it.
Right.
And yet, time and again, we've chosen hope. We've chosen to fight for a better future. And he'd argue, I think, that choice, that's always there.
Right. So even amidst, like, all the chaos and everything, we still have a choice.
We always have a choice.
But where do we even begin? Like, Fromm talks about this idea of, like, active participation being so important. What does that even look like in our, day-to-day lives?
Yeah. It's not always some big, grand gesture.
Right.
It really starts with awareness, I think. Like, paying attention to those moments when, maybe you're scrolling online or you're about to buy something.
Yeah.
And just asking yourself, do I really need this? Or am I just, trying to fill a void here?
It's being more conscious.
Exactly. Being a conscious consumer, prioritizing experiences over possessions, and of course, fostering genuine connection with, the people around us.
So it's those small, like, everyday choices you're saying.
Yeah.
But they all kind of add up to something bigger.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But then, it's also about, like you were saying, engaging in, like, larger systems change.
Right.
Fromm would definitely encourage us to, like, support movements that align with being values, So things like environmental sustainability, social justice, ethical economics, these are all interconnected.
Yeah. It's like that saying, right? The personal is political.
Exactly.
Like, we can't separate our individual choices from these larger systems that we're a part of.
100%. And that's, I think, where Fromm's call to action becomes really powerful.
Okay.
Because he's not just saying, like, go meditate more and buy less stuff,
Right.
He's challenging us to, like, actually create a world that reflects these being values at every level.
It's a tall order.
It is.
But I have to say, like, hearing you talk about it, it feels, I don't know, a little less impossible than,
Right.
than it did before, because it's about each of us, like, taking responsibility, right?
Yeah.
Not just waiting for, like, someone else to come along and fix things for us.
Exactly. And, Fromm actually ends the book with this, like, incredibly thought-provoking question.
Okay.
He asks, if you were to let go of needing to have so much, what would it free you up to be?
Wow. That really is, like, the question, isn't it?
It's a big one.
Because when you really think about it, so much of our energy goes into, like, acquiring and holding on to and protecting all the stuff that we have.
It's exhausting just thinking about it.
It really is.
Imagine all that energy, but redirected towards creativity, towards love, towards, actually building a more just and sustainable world. Like, that's the potential that Fromm saw in humanity.
It's a good reminder that, like, another way of being is possible.
It's always possible.
And maybe, just maybe, it all starts with each of us, like, asking ourselves that question.
That's a good place to start.
What would it really mean for me to truly be? So much to think about. A huge thank you to you. This has been an incredible deep dive into Fromm's work.
It's been a pleasure.
And for all of you listening out there, we hope this sparks some reflection, maybe some curiosity, maybe even a little bit of hope. Until next time, keep diving.